And fans, welcome to this week's Sports Chat. The sporting world's basically winding down locally. We've got the big game Thursday, the Blue and Orange game.
Yeah, we stopped by spring practice today, talked to the coaches. They mentioned that they're going to try to do a few new wrinkles this year for some of the halftime show and competitions that they have during halftime. Had a pretty good spring practice so far. They went to Farragut, scrimmaged against Farragut, and did pretty well against the Admirals. Admirals always a powerful team in the opposing district, in the SEC of Tennessee districts, as they say, because they're in there with Maryville and West and a few other really good teams.
Right. And
Farragut handled Oak Ridge pretty well last year in a cross-district matchup.
And Farragut's a traditional powerhouse. I mean, before they switched it to this terrible Z plan playoff system, I mean, they were dominant in their district because Maryville was in a different district.
Farragut's a huge school too. You looking at 2,500 or so kids. Of course, they move up to 6A in the playoffs when that comes around. Yeah, anyway, they're a good school, and I said Campbell County, last I heard, I think had scored 4 touchdowns in the scrimmage, and Farragut had scored 1. And it's just your typical spring work, but the encouraging side that Campbell County's defense was able to somewhat contain Farragut with just some number of sheer impact players they lost. They didn't lose a big number of players, but as we talked about before, the players Campbell County lost are impact players.
That's true. Bailey, Evans, Monday, especially on defense, and then you got Corey Phillips, who was just your big man threat on offense being gone.
Well, Corey Phillips also a good defensive back.
He was.
And it's tough to throw over the top of him. You know, him out there at 6'5". Bring some other good guys back though in Torres, Joe Elgins, and Preston Miller. A lot of speed comes back. Torres with his fearsome tackling. Everybody's hears those footsteps coming. And we know what's coming back on offense, which are pretty much those guys plus Jeffers, and I think three or four starters on the offensive line are coming back, and Paul Cordell, of course, coming back.
So don't necessarily say we're going to duplicate a 9-1 regular season, but things are still looking pretty good for Campbell County.
As strange as it sounds, we would have been better off last season if we went 8-2 or 7-3, because we would have been shipped down towards Chattanooga and not been in the same place where we had to play West in the second round. And we would have had 2 road games, but against teams that finished 6-4 or 7-3 type seasons, rather than facing West, who was just only lost to Maryville before the state championship game.
Of course, Rachel Nelson still has one last go-round, and she's really the only other active Cougar athlete right now.
Yeah, she'll be at the state track meet on graduation day for Campbell County, I believe, or Friday, possibly the day before, but I think it's on graduation because I recall Shayla Goins had to either stretch it or miss graduation, one of the two.
She basically had to get her throw in and come home.
In the school year, as I said, everything's wound down. Just got the spring game in 2 days, or probably a day or so after you see this. It'll be on a Thursday, and this should be up by Tuesday night, Wednesday morning. That's just about it. I mean, in the long dry period of summer, not much goes on locally. Some Little League stuff, which it's almost time for Little League football season to start.
Right, they've been having their sign-ups.
Little League, the youngest of the baseball team squads, as odd as it sounds because it's a game of summer, but the youngest kids are, I believe, winding down their season. I think they had a tournament.
They had tournaments this weekend.
And so it's already transitioning
over. That's really the kids that were what we would consider T-ball.
Yeah, it's very young kids. But then, so you'll start your Little League football or your very junior league, lowest level football, which I think that's improving in the county. And
Brent Lester and Stephen Phillips have done a good job with that program.
That helps the middle schools and eventually the high schools.
I think we talked to Coach Price. Said they were probably going to be practicing at LaFollette Middle School tomorrow.
Yeah, probably by the time you read this or see this, obviously that will
already
happen. But I just come out to the spring game on Thursday, watch them, see what they throw out there, see what some of the new players that will be stepping up. And they're going to be, like I say, new guys filling in for Bailey, Evans, Christian Monday, all that. You may have saw some of them last year. You may see a few new guys moving up from the freshman team last year, the JV team. JV team
Mike
I think,
Rhodes.
went 6-1 or something like that last year. They only lost one game, and it was to Oak Ridge on a last-second kickoff return touchdown. So, you know, you got some players coming up, and Coach Price did tell us that the starters were going to play the first half, and that it would be entirely the
New
second
guys.
team and the new guys playing the second half of the spring game. So, you know, you get to see a lot of players you might not get to see on Fridays in the fall because they're still pretty young, and if you don't make it to JV games. So it's a good opportunity.
Of course, we're still in the middle of a baseball coaching search for the high school.
Yeah, I'm sure that'll be solved over the course of the summer. Long time, obviously, till baseball season starts. They do have fall workouts to some extent, but got quite a few months for that search to take place, and I guess they'll hire somebody competent.
Well, that's about all that's going on locally in sports. On the bigger stages, of course, NHL playoffs are going on, NBA playoffs are going on.
Yeah, we're doing to the Final Four in the NHL. Blackhawks lead 1-0 in their series. Of course, they close that out. If they can close that out, they'll have a chance to defend their Stanley Cup, but it won't be against Boston this year, who was the number 1 seed in the East and have been favored to make it back to the Stanley Cup. They were
Summarily eliminated.
eliminated by the Montreal Canadiens.
They are the Habs again this year.
Very, very rare for Canadian teams to actually make it this far in hockey these days, as strange as that sounds. Montreal's playing the New York Rangers. Got beat pretty bad in game 1. Had some bad news, too, for them. They lost their goalie, who was a Canadian Olympic goalie that won a gold medal.
And that's such a huge blow.
Yeah, if you lose your goalie in the playoffs, and it's going to be really tough to win that series. I think that you might get the big New York versus Chicago rematch. That would be the 2 of the 3 biggest media markets. If you don't, you're going to get a New York probably versus LA, which would be the 2 biggest media markets. But I believe Chicago is going to close out LA.
And of course, the beauty of it being Chicago and New York, it's 2 of the original NHL teams.
A lot of history between both of them. As New York's won quite a few Stanley Cups, and of course Chicago's won 2 in the last 3 years. Probably the best team in hockey right now. NBA, the Heat lost the first game of the series to the Pacers last night. Very happy for that. Don't like the Heat.
Always happy to see the Heat lose.
Pacers have been really up and down throughout the playoffs. They had the best record in the regular season, but over the last month or so of the season, they had a lot of ups and downs, and they struggled to get to the finals more than most people thought they would as a 1 seed. They had a rough game against the 8 seed, a rough series against the 8 seed. They've not been playing that well at home, which is rare for the playoffs, and the Heat have lost a couple of games at home too in the playoffs.
Right, and, I think,
they've lost or played poorly.
I don't dislike Indiana. I'm a big Reggie Miller fan. He's one of their best players.
I don't like Reggie Miller, and he's been retired for 15 years. But otherwise, yeah, it's
Of course, you got a lot of the NFL offseason, the signings. Brandon Marshall got a big contract today for the Bears.
yeah. Dallas signed a defensive end that he was a former top draft pick of the Bears, played for Rob Marinelli, but didn't really catch on that well with the Bears. I can't pronounce his name. It's like Adoni Oki, strange name, but the Cowboys desperately need defensive line help, so they're going to try to revitalize the guy's career, I guess. And so he did play for Marinelli and Chicago. Dallas's draft was, of course, average at best. Going through these mini camps, we'll see what happens. I did see a funny story that the San Antonio Spurs, apparently Tony Romo goes to their games sometimes. It seems like whenever he goes to their games, they lose. That doesn't surprise me. Tony Romo's cursed to teams in Texas.
Now, on the UT front, we do officially have the big guy from Florida Gulf Coast.
Yeah, Eric McKnight, 6'9", 215-pound center. He's a fifth-year guy. Going to come in. He'll tie the scholarship up for only a year, but brings senior experience. He was on the team that beat Georgetown in the NCAA tournament as a 15 seed versus a 2 seed. One of the rare times that's actually happened a couple of years ago. Probably not going to be the greatest player in the world, but at this point we're short on posts, and you can get a fifth-year senior that's going to come in. He's going to average probably 6, 7, 8 points a game, 6, 7 rebounds a game. And just be surrounded by a bevy of wing players by the way recruiting's looking right now, plus what we have coming back. It's hard to complain about anything Tyndall's doing. The 24/7 ranks the top 4 players in each class. Of course, Conzo had only signed 4 players, but it was ranked 49th in the country. Tyndall is top 4 players right now. He signed more than that, but his top 4 players ranked 45th in the country. So he came in, and then 2 weeks, signed a better class than Conzo who'd been working on the class for, a year and a half, usually about how far out you're working on your class in basketball, because Tennessee's already offered some 2016 guys. That's how far out your basketball recruiting goes.
Still baffles me that people wanted to keep Conzo.
Him leaving was the best possible scenario. Tennessee managed to get a new coach. Looks like he's going to be a better coach, definitely more personable coach. And they got paid $1.3 million for him to leave. Cal fans are currently wondering what's going on. All their recruits decommitted as well, but Conzo really hasn't signed anybody except for the guy that committed to Tennessee one day and committed to Cal the next. And they're not sure if he's going to get in school yet because something to do with his classes in Britain, because he's from London or somewhere around the London area in England. We'll see what happens. Won't notify a lot. I can see anywhere from 15 to 20 wins next year, and that's about what I expected if Conzo came back, but with no recruiting hope really, because Rob Lewis from VolQuest wrote a story after Conzo finally left. You can't really write this story for VolQuest because Brent Hubbs is tied in. He's in bed with UT.
Right.
But while Conzo left, he wrote a story that he was baffled by their recruiting process. It appeared that Conzo didn't really, he didn't want to work that hard on any recruit that didn't already have a tie to Tennessee in some way or another. He wasn't going to invest any time recruiting those guys. And for the 2015 class, he had apparently already mailed it in and just wasn't even really trying, according to Rob Lewis. He was baffled by the lack of activity they were showing. I mean, I saw more news in the last 2 weeks about 2015 or 2016 guys than I saw in the entire last year from Conzo recruiting.
And of course, we're rapidly approaching football. It's not all that long till UT kicks off.
No. Kickoff, of course, August 31st. Freshman will report for practice 1st of August. Basically, you got a couple of months. Pretty much boring baseball. Unless you're a fan of the rare, actual World Series contender and can somehow stomach the 162-game regular season, you're pretty much bored with baseball until the playoffs start, and probably still yet then, but then football season starts, so you don't really care anymore anyway, because you're watching football if you're going to make sense about you. Campbell County will kick off. First scrimmage is July 31st against Grace Christian Academy, I believe. Or possibly Coach Price did say that I think they may have one at Webb right before that, but Webb and Grace Christian are 2 scrimmages.
And the Grace Christian's a 3-way scrimmage. There'll be another team there.
2 traditionally powerful schools with Grace Christian and Webb, and I want to say it was a 3rd powerful school as well had been mentioned in that 3-way scrimmage. But it's good to work against players of that caliber. It's players that are probably going to be competing in the state playoffs, if not for the state championship. I'm not sure if
Grace is usually a contender. Webb's almost always a contender.
when Grace isn't on probation, they're right there. Grace was on probation a couple of years and went undefeated, but couldn't play in the playoffs. I think they're off probation finally.
They are. They played. I watched them play on TV in the playoffs last year.
Yeah, did they make the state championship game last year?
No, Trousdale County eliminated them in the semis.
I knew they made it pretty far out through there. But still, it's good for Campbell County to get to play against athletes of that caliber.
And that sadly about wraps it up for Sports Chat. There's just not that much to chat about today.
No, it's the quiet season. That's about all we have.